Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So we're going to start out talking about RSI. I'm going to look at one of my favorite patterns in RSI where we use a deep pullback and then trend, right? We get a strong trend in place and we're looking for a counter trend pullback. And RSI shows this in a really nice manner to identify pretty good opportunities. I'm going to give you several examples of those. And then when we're done with that, we'll take a hard look at the market and then we'll look at some individual stock requests as well as a couple of ideas. Let's go ahead and get going. I'm going to start out with some weekly charts and then move on to a few dailies just to show the different time frames and how this works. So I've got the a chart of IBM up, and I'll take a few minutes just to make sure we're all on the same page with this signal. So what we're trying to find is essentially a trend to the upside. We have trend characteristics that suggest the trend is going, okay? And we get a pretty sharp little pullback, counter trend. All right, that's counter to the trend. We know the trend's up and we're looking for something maybe a little sharp. And I like to think of it like a slingshot because of the way it pulls in. It's almost like a rubber band being pulled back. And then when you let go, it snaps. All right, and it's going to snap back. So we've got this huge base of IBM. We break out to the upside with very good momentum characteristics. One thing that's really interesting is we actually got very close to giving this exact signal prior to the breakout. That will happen periodically. Where we do it inside the base, we form a higher low and it comes out that way. But I want to talk about the one that happened after. We get a pretty ferocious decline afterwards and we get this incredibly deep oversold reading. And yet the RSI 20 stays right around the 50 mark. So RSI 5 gets down to about 10 and the RSI 5 is hanging in the 50 area. All right. When RSI 20 can hang up there and RSI 5 gets anywhere, it closes anywhere from 30 or below, then we have what I'd call this RSI signal. It's a very bullish signal. I call it the deep oversold RSI, or I might start calling it a slingshot because of the deep characteristics of the pullback. When we get that, we can really look for any sign of an upturn to click us back in. If we could take out a prior day's high, we could make a pivot low, we could see a zig going to a zag, anything that you really want to use that you're comfortable with. But what I would tell you is, give it a little room just in case it does some kind of a double bottom. But the characteristics of this are such that we've gotten deeply oversold. The moving averages are still basically up. Now, I do recognize that IBM's 18 did turn down. But when this reached a signal, when it was a signal, and this was oversold here, the moving average was still rising. And every now and again, what will happen is after the signal basically turns up, it will turn down a little bit. And a lot of times it'll form this little duck bill. You see how it looks like a little duck bill right there? That'll happen periodically. As long as your 40 is still rising and you got your 18-month underneath, and really the longer term moving average, it's one time frame up 18 is what I'm showing there in green. All right. So as long as we've got decent momentum characteristics when the trigger takes place, then I think it's a pretty good signal. We get a deep oversold and this stays in trend territory at 50 mark or higher. All right. So that's pretty much what we're looking for. Now look at something like PM. Again, look at this huge base, 2 to 3 year base, monster move to the upside, gets momentum going. And then we get this really sharp pullback to a rising 40. The 18, flattens out a little bit, but we've got the catcher's mitt underneath with the 18-month. And then look, we get RSI 20 hanging in the low 50s. RSI 5 gets down to about 20. Really good signal. Now, you have to determine whether you want to call this a trading play or a bigger picture play. Typically, what I'm looking at is if it comes out of a base and it's early, it happens early in the breakout pattern, then you could play it for a longer term play. A lot of times, if it happens mid like this, you could just, take your targets and move on and, play it for a trading move. That's kind of up to you, and you can look at it optimally. I look at it, I just visually look at it. This to me is a pretty big base. I think this is going to go on for a while. But, use whatever plan you want to use for that. Look at something like Walmart. Now, this one's a little bit easier to discern. It took off. I mean, this has gone a long way. And then we get the sharp pullback. Again, we get a really beautiful signal. But I would say it's later in the trend. I would play this more as a trading play, let it break out, make another move. But after that, I would probably be looking to move on, at least if I'm basing it off of this signal, all right? If I'm looking at that, that's probably what I'd be doing. Now look at something like Berkshire Hathaway. This happened early in the cup, you basically form like a cup and handle almost, and the handle forms this signal, right? And then we start to take off. So yeah, we can play something like this that has been going sideways or forming some kind of a base over a year. Definitely play that for a longer term play, but very good signal there. Look at something like ACN. You can see this back in 2020, sharp move to the downside, V-bottoms, moves up, but then after we get trending to the upside, we get this signal here. The first low is low enough on an RSI 5 basis to give that signal. It does come back and test, but then it takes off like a rocket over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. Look at something like CMI. Again, long sideways pattern, then breaks out and then tests the breakout area with this signal, and then moves to the upside. Now has had some volatility, obviously, but again, a pretty strong signal, definitely worth noting. Let's look at a couple of daily charts. Look at something like CME off the daily, turns to the upside, and we get the 18 and the 40-day rising. We've got the 18-week line turning to the upside. All these lines rising, and then look at this huge deep reading we get, right? And then that was pretty much the kickoff move. Look at something like AEM. Now this has been going. We've had a lot of standard RSI buy signals in this, but this last one here had that deep oversold reading, and it's really been a pretty nice trading signal, right? Something like COF, turning the corner. It's a 1, 2, 3 reversal, and the 2 forms this RSI buy signal with the deep reading, right? And then we get a nice move to the upside. So it can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Look at STT. Nice move to the upside. It starts to break out, and then we get a sharp pullback here that gives us that reading back to back, right? We get one here, one here. Both of these pullbacks are characteristic of a nice RSI slingshot here, right? And we get a nice move to the upside. And then look at the way this topped out. We get a rally back up. We get the signal to the downside and a violent break to the downside. Now, it just found support at the prior lows, but really nice trading signal there anyway. So this is something I definitely would keep an eye out for. It can really help, especially in the environment we're in right now where we get these little sharp pullbacks. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So I'm on the services page of RabilStockResearch.com. At the top, you can see I've got my advanced trend and momentum courses. There's 3 different courses. You can get a discount if you buy them all as a bundle. They are lifetime access now, all right? And also, the individual package has about 3 to 4 reports that come each week, plus a special video for that package. And I also do a once a month webinar that is very popular with the subscribers. So you can take a look there. If you're interested in just getting started, you can go up to the top and hit the book. This will give you information on the book. It gets you started on the approach. Comments are for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investments. So we're going to start out with the S&P using the spider. We're going to go through the market conditions. Now, the sentiment has moved up again. We have 40% more bulls than bears based on the Investors Intelligence Sentiment Survey. All right, this is something I've used for years. They were clients of mine, so I know this indicator pretty well. We're getting up into a danger zone. I mean, typically, as you approach that 40% level, especially when you've gone this far, meaning we've had such a big run, and this has moved in a pretty substantial manner over the course of this move. So I just have this at the negative point right now, and we use this as a secondary indicator. All right. That means we don't usually just sell based on this indicator. The primary indicators we're using are the trend and momentum, and we're using the volatility, the overbought, oversold, and the sentiment as supporting evidence. All right. So right now we've got the short-term overbought at 85. The RSI 5 is really getting up there. Definitely in a zone where, again, it can linger up there for a while. So we're looking for price to give us some type of signal. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. Volatility is still positive. The trends are all positive. The only momentum problem we have is on the weekly chart. DI just cannot confirm. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at these. So we've got declining volatility based on the average true range. That's the size of these bars. These bars continue to stay mild in their size, right? We had pretty substantial size in them during the climb. That's when we get this huge move like that. But the moving average is declining and the average true range is declining below that. That means that we have, reduced risk type of condition based on the volatility. The daily is the same way, and it's been that way since beginning of May, early May. We've seen all these pullbacks have been pretty good opportunities, really. Anytime you get an RSI drop with low volatility and the trend is up, we want to take advantage of that, all right? We haven't had that happen on the weekly yet, but if we get a pullback, that's basically what I would be looking for if this RSI can drop down closer to the 50 level. All right, let's take a quick look, run through the individual time frames. So monthly continues to move, but we're on month 5, 6, something like that, of moving up, right? I mean, you would think at some point we have a pause or a pullback, maybe check back towards its 18-month line, but I don't see anything, overtly, it's not like it's at extreme. It's not really that overbought, and so we don't have any kind of momentum divergence really in place, so I'm okay with that. The real issue right now, the only real issue we have is that this DI line is not able to confirm, right? We haven't been able to get this to cross above since we got back here. In June, we pushed up. We really haven't had much progress, even though the index continues to move higher. So MACD is confirming okay, but we don't have green DI showing the strength of the buyers is not all that great. The reason why, let me zero in on this real quick. The reason why I wouldn't put this in the negative camp is because we need to see the seller step in. You see how we're making lower highs? We need to see this pop. If we get a pop that crosses, that definitely shows the sellers are showing signs of strength, then that would be a pretty important sign for the market. And I think most likely we're going to come back here and test this 18-week out, maybe even the 18-month line, in fact. So I would be ready for that. But the reason why we're not doing anything at this point is we haven't had a break of the 18-day, all right, which is pretty amazing. We tested it back here. We've tested it numerous times. We gapped down below, but then never confirmed. Gap down below, never confirmed. So confirming means we close below, and then we take out the bar that closes below. We haven't had that happen. You can see we close below here, but then we move right back up. Same thing happened here. So we're really looking for this 18-day to roll over, and we just haven't had the ability. The market has not had strong enough selling to get that to happen. And then notice what's happened to the DI on this last move. The DI has finally kicked in and shown a lot of strength, causing the ADX to move up again. Now, again, I don't think this is some powerful signal to buy. What we're using it for is its criteria is basically telling us that as long as we stay above this 18-day line, we have to respect this trend, all right? And that is, I think, the key right now. We do want to use the hourly chart periodically, and you can see this move has had pretty good momentum associated with it. But the key right now, I think, to focus on is that the 18-day line and the daily chart. Okay, let's switch over. We're going to start out with the IWM. We're going to look at a few indices and then move into the individual stock requests, and then I'm going to have a few ideas at the end. So this IWM keeps moving up, right? We're showing signs of improvement overall, but this is the relative strength line. So we want to see improvement over and above the S&P, and that's what's going to cause this black line to move up. The more we can improve over and above the S&P, the more likelihood is this market is going to expand into more names, and it is just a much easier environment to trade. All right, so that's what we're watching for. The improvement is good enough. We have a little bit better DI action on the weekly chart, but the reality is that we're just going to need more strength out of this index. I'd actually like to see it break out, but again, really keying off this relative strength line. All right, so we keep an eye on that. Look at what's going on with the DBC. So this is the commodity index. I think that oil is does play a big role in this. But just overall, the way this is playing out, it looks like it's cupping around near the zero line. It's got a low ADX condition on the monthly chart. If we were actually to expand this to a quarterly chart, you can see what's happened. We had a strong move to the upside, and now we've worked our way back towards the 18 quarterly, the quarterly 18. And so this is kind of an interesting standpoint. A picture from a longer term standpoint. All right. Now, to kick things off, we really want to watch for this weekly chart to kick in and get back above this prior high, and that would complete the 1, 2, 3 reversal. If we got that 1, 2, 3, now 1, 2, 3 is outlined in my course and actually in my book as well. So, you can look for this pattern. If we can get back above this red bar here, I think that would be a really good sign here that things are truly turning. All right, look at XOP. I think this is really interesting as well. We had an undercut pattern here, which means we undercut a key support level by with this red bar to the downside, and then immediately reverse back up. Now, what we've done is we've basically we're working this sideways pattern, right? We're working the sideways pattern right below the these moving averages. So we really are looking for, I would say, a break above this prior high. You can see it on the daily chart. We've got a pretty nice looking little sideways, almost like a cup and handle pattern with improving momentum. I think if we can break out from that, that we would definitely want to be on the lookout for this. I think this could really start this index moving higher. So certainly want to keep an eye out. If we get back up through like a high 130, something like that, I think that would be a very bullish sign. Okay, look at ATIA. This was a request, really strong move to the upside. We're going to need some kind of a consolidation pattern. What's going to end up happening is this trend on the daily is going to turn negative. This 18 is going to cross down below the 40, and we're going to pull back closer to the 18 week. Then it's game on. We're going to look for this to start reversing back up in line with this trend to the upside. Momentum is really good here. The volume pattern is good. We just need an entry, and we're going to need to see this go in the opposite direction. I call it an opposing trend pattern. All right. IBKR is doing that right now. You see how we had the strong move to the upside? Actually, the momentum didn't confirm this based on the ADX all that great. It did get above 25, so we can play this for a pullback. All right, so we've worked our way back towards the 18-week line, and look at what's happened on this time frame. The 18 has crossed down below the 40, all right? Now, the 40 is still rising, and I like to see that. We want to see kind of a rising 40 throughout. But we're going to need to get back above this resistance level here. We've hit our head on against it a few times. We're going to need to punch through there. If we do, I think this is going to look pretty attractive for a trading play. So be on the watch for that. I think that looks pretty interesting. NVTS. So yeah, I like the strength in this. This had a lot of strength to the upside. You can see the movement. You can see the ADX confirmation, but the pullback also had some strength to it. A little bit more strength than I would want to see. And it caused overrun in the MACD, right? And the MACD on the daily chart broke below the zero line. So now we're watching for something a little bit more substantial on the way back up. We're going to want to see this move up and then pause and hold above the 18 on a pullback and then turn to the upside. For this time frame, we're going to see maybe it'll work up to 7.5 and then come back down. We're going to need some kind of a hitch in there to really set this one up. Certainly worth watching, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time. SMR is in a very similar pattern. You can see how everybody went in, but the volume kind of shows we definitely saw some selling on the way out. All right, so we had a little too much strength causing overrun here, too much strength causing overrun based on the MACD, right? So the MACD is telling us just be a little bit more patient here, all right? And in order to do that, we're going to want to see this come back up above this prior high. That's what I would be watching for on that one. Okay, let's look at a few stocks that kind of piqued my interest. Actually, no, this was one more request. Look at the way this has been consolidating here, right? And I think if this can come up through this little resistance area here, it's really going to get itself going. This is a reverse divergence on the monthly chart, and we've had this kind of bumping up against the zero line with low ADX. I think if this can break out, really get through the 140 level with in a meaningful way, then I think this is going to look really attractive. All right, I wanted to point out a couple things. Look at this Baidu. Look at the way this is moving. This has been a low ADX condition for a very, very long time, both monthly and weekly. And now we're getting the kickoff move that's starting the momentum starting on the daily chart. Watch for a pullback. Put an alarm in for a pullback and watch this. This is going to look pretty interesting if it pulls back the right way. KMI, look at the way this is working out with a low ADX condition, and we got the MACD right at the zero line. Very attractive pattern. I think if we can punch through to the upside, get through this, work our way up closer to 30, maybe high 20s, and I think that's going to kick things off to the upside on that one. And then look at NOC. This is a big breakout on a monthly chart. It's got the MACD going and the ADX. We're starting to kick in on the weekly chart. Now we're starting to pull back. So I would be watching for that opposing trend pattern on this time frame to kick things off to the upside. So keep an eye out for that one. Thanks for joining me today. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Also, if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, you can go to my YouTube channel. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.